Last month, we had a meal packing event where we partnered with Children of the Nations to pack over 50,000 meals for children in Sierra Leone. It was incredible to see the response from Timberlakers. We had so many people show up, families serving together, and really just gaining the heart for the people. It's a practical way that we as a church are able to share the love of Jesus with those around us. In a few months, the meals will be on their way to Sierra Leone with a team from Children of the Nation, where thousands and thousands of kids are going to be fed. This was all possible and paid for because of your regular giving. Thank you so much for your generosity. It really does make an incredible impact in so many lives.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. My name is Jedi. I'm one of the pastors here at Timberlake. I'm so excited that you're here. Hello to all of our friends online who are joining us. I hope you're having a great morning too. Glad that technology can connect us in this way. Well, our whole church over the past few months have been in a teaching series called Summer Playlist, and it's been a lot of fun. Similar to when you build your own playlist in Spotify or Apple Music, you might have a mix of different things. Like for instance, you might be into Lone Star or ABBA or Olivia Rodrigo and Michael Jackson and Prince. And so this sermon series has basically been an eclectic mix of ideas and themes from the Bible. And as I got to thinking about what I wanted to add this morning, I found a photo that took me back down memory lane. So, some context for this picture. It's from when Sarah and I were dating, which actually was about 19 years ago, if you can believe it, okay? And if you look at this picture, if you know my wife, like she's still as beautiful and as radiant as she was back then. Me, well, clearly ministry hasn't been so good for me. At this point in my life, I have a 5 head now instead of a 4 head. It's a really large forehead. I'm balding in the back, like my hair is going away. But this is when we were together in college, and she wrote Happiness. It was a time of our life where we were very happy, and it's not crossed off or anything, you know? So it's been good. And I saw this picture, and it reminded me of a time. We actually met at the University of Texas. We started dating right before I transferred to a small Christian liberal arts university in Southeast Tennessee called Lee University. We were long distance for 3 years. We dated 2 years, we were engaged for 1, got married, moved to Boston, and now Washington. It's 20 years later that we are here. Now, I used to commute home for the summer, and we used to make these mixtapes for each other. And back in the day, you would have CDs that you would put in CD players, and you would make sure to drive carefully over speed bumps to not scratch your CDs so you could enjoy your mixtapes. And these mixtapes were basically love letters that we would send each other. And every time I would drive from Tennessee to Texas for 14 hours, Sarah would give me a new mixtape. Now, back in the day, the songs were so good. Like, really good. Modern songs, maybe not so much. Like, how many of you remember Brian McKnight? Anyone here? Okay. So if I say 1, you're like a dream come true. 2, just wanna be with you. 3, girl, it's plain to see that. 4, repeat steps. 5, make you. If ever I believe my work is done, then I start back at 1. Yeah. Right? Or like maybe some of you were into this, like Mariah Carey, like, you know, if I go do-do-do-dow, what comes next? Yeah, see? Music back then was so good. Mariah Carey, Usher, Casey and JoJo, these were the songs that filled our mixtapes. Now, each of these were about an hour long, and so I would listen to them over and over again and kind of remember all the loving memories and moments that we had throughout our relationship that year. I loved those mixtapes. And every year I got a new one. They were so meaningful for me because it was personalized and specific and curated. And every time I listened to them, I had this feeling. It felt like Sarah was saying to me, you matter to me. You matter to me. Now, some of you are like, oh, that's so sweet. And others of you are looking for little bags so you could vomit, like, you know, on the airplane when you're having a hard time. But seriously, I felt like these little acts of love were communicating to me that to Sarah, I mattered. And over our 17 years of marriage and 20 years of being together, this feeling, this message is one that I've heard a lot. I actually think that we experience this, every single person, at some point in our life. For me, it was in the context of romantic relationships. But the truth is that most moms and dads feel this way towards their children at some point. Maybe not forever, but at some point they say things like, hey, I love you. I care for you. There's no one like you. You are important. You matter to me. Now, I know that right now, as we talk about this, some of you are like, really? Is this what we're gonna talk about today? There's like a wall of unbelievability that comes up. Because even though we've heard this at some point in our life, what ends up happening over the course of our life is that we lose this feeling. We lose this sense of uniqueness and importance, this foundational part of our identity that says we matter. As we grow into adulthood and as we grow into life and things happen to us, we start losing it. Now, the thing is that when we believe these words, right? You matter, there's no one like you, you're unique, you're important. It gives us so much power and confidence. That feeling of being important and mattering to someone can really help you and me as we navigate different challenges in life. I think there's several reasons why we lose this along the way. Maybe it's because we bought into the lie that we are what we produce and that our identity has been shaped by that. And it's okay if you're producing well, right? It's okay if you're crushing it and you're hitting your goals, but when you're struggling or if you get laid off and you're not producing as much, well, then all of a sudden, doesn't it feel like you matter much anymore, especially to yourself and to those around you who you just seem to be disappointing. Or maybe it's because we're influenced by social media and we see special people there who really matter, but not us. Never mind the fact that they're just going around like clipping, like zoom. You ever watch people like take selfies? It's like the most ridiculous thing, the poses they do, right? Some of you are like, oh, he's talking about me right now. You feel that. We all see you do it. Never mind the fact that those are like the ESPN Sports Center top 10 highlights of your life, curated to make sure that everything looks like it's going good. Never mind that. When we look at people's stories and reels and Instagram, all of a sudden we start comparing ourselves and they matter, but not us. Like they're really important. They have so many followers, but I have like 70 and most of them are family members. Or maybe it's because like we did something and something was done to us that marred the image of uniqueness into some kind of painful memory and trauma. And now all that remains are the remnants of those experiences that continue to haunt us. Those painful words, those feelings of hurt get triggered over and over again, and we get stuck in cycles that say the opposite of you're important to me, you matter. Regardless of the reason, what eventually happens to us is that we start living life in a way that we were never meant to. We start losing sight of the truth that God has for us. And his desire is that our identity is built on a different foundation. If we start believing those things that we see and those messages, eventually that foundation gets replaced with something else, and over the course of time, it can have some devastating consequences. I mean, think about it for a second. What would your life look like if you could really believe and live into this idea? You matter. You're important. You're unique. There's no one like you. You matter. I'm guessing that maybe for you, maybe for me, maybe for many of us, our life would look very different than some of the things that we're going through right now if we could actually believe that. Now, fortunately for us, the Bible has a lot to say about this because humans have been struggling with this idea for a long time. And so this morning, I want to share 3 biblical truths that will help us remember and recalibrate our foundation of identity. Okay, you guys ready? The first one is simply this: you are not an accident. You are not an accident. Now, some of you may have been unexpected, right? Meaning that your parents got a bit too excited and one thing led to another and they kind of forgot in nature. I don't care if your parents referred to you as the mistake by the lake. I'm telling you, you're not an accident. All right, look at what David writes in Psalm 139, this biblical poem. For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. God created you. He put you together. He fashioned every part of you in your mother's womb. You weren't hidden from him. You're not an accident. Even before your life began, there was great intention in how he put you together. And when God saw you for the first time, when he saw the life that came to be, he felt incredibly proud and immense joy. Now, if that's hard for you to believe, all you have to do is take a kid to Build-A-Bear Workshop. And for those of you who don't know what Build-A-Bear Workshop is, it's a place where you go and you give like $150 for a bear that you end up building with your kids that they love for a while and then eventually gets lost with all the other bears and all the other things. But it's a really magical place, especially for kids who go there for the first time. Basically, you go there and there's a variety of fluffy friends, all different sizes and all different shapes. And now they come from different shows and different themes. And so your kid, as they're walking through it, gets to choose which one they want to do and which one they want to take. They end up taking that fluffy friend. You get to choose a heart for that fluffy friend. All different colors, all different nationalities, all different cultures. They even have real beating hearts now. Electric beating hearts. So that your bear can have a beating heart and a life and a moment. After that happens, you go through and you put clothes and accessories, and you could create whatever vibe you want. Winter Wonderland, done. Fairy princess, done. Superhero, done. Doesn't matter. Your child can go through that and do every single one. And as you're going through this, it's really a test of your patience and a test of your pocketbook, because they change their mind a lot. And they always, for some reason, choose the most expensive things. You guys know what I'm talking about? But there's this moment at the very end where you get a certificate with that fluffy friend's name. And then that kid gets that fluffy friend, that bear in their hand, and there's a moment, there's a look in their face where they go, wow, this is awesome. It's priceless, it's magical. It's one of incredible pride and joy. There's something that happens in that creative process. And it's similar to when we make things in our life. My wife, she loves flowers. I like to go to a florist and pay lots of money for arranged flowers. My wife says, no, I like arranging my own flowers. So she tells me to go buy all the different 5 things. I literally just guess. She comes, makes it into a beautiful arrangement. She steps back and says, wow, this is amazing. And whether you feel that way when you build your Millennium Falcon Lego kit or something else in life, we have immense pride and joy when we create something. Now, if we're able to do that, if kids are able to do that, and humans are able to do that, how much more do you think God felt when he made you? When he saw you for the first time, how much joy and pride do you think he felt? I can assure you that it was more than what we see at Build-A-Bear or anywhere else. When God created you, he thought, wow, what a masterpiece. I can't wait to see what he's gonna do. I can't wait to see who she's gonna become. I'm so proud. Now I know that some of you have parts that you just don't like about yourself or you wish you could get rid of. Maybe it's a part of your personality or your physical appearance. And I know that we live in a fallen world and that we make mistakes and creation isn't perfect and there's complex reasons why things turn out the way they do. But there are some things that are in us that we don't like that God may have actually put there for a reason. Maybe it's your endless energy or your ultra shyness or your over the topness. Maybe it's your curly hair, which has a life of its own no matter what product you use. Maybe it's those freckles that you can't stand, but your relatives think are adorable. You know, for me, it's my straightforward directness. I'm sure that my wife and kids and my colleagues would love if I were different. But the truth is that God created us intentionally. And even when we face limitations mentally, emotionally, spiritually, even in light of those things, there's a part of us, a core part of us, that he created with great thought and care. When God made you, he was filled with so much pride and joy. He thought, wow, he's amazing. She is awesome. And I don't care what you've heard. I don't care who's tried to devalue you. You are not an accident. Okay, so not only were you created with great intentionality, but I believe that you were created for a purpose. Not only were you created with care and intention, but you were also created for a purpose. Look at these words that God says to a man named Jeremiah in the Bible. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Jeremiah was a prophet. Prophets were basically people who knew the heart of God and communicated his message to them. They served as civic leaders and political leaders and spiritual leaders for the Jewish people. He was actually one of the greatest prophets who ever lived. He has 2 books in the Bible, Jeremiah, another one called Lamentations. It's called Lamentations because it's full of lament. He was talking to people and basically crying all the time. The people of God were going through a really dark period in their life. And Jeremiah was called to say these hard things, and so he just lamented over and over again. And there's this really cool, before you think that he was kind of weak, there's this really cool story where he's taken captive and he's thrown into the middle of a pit. And these people say, stop prophesying and stop telling us what God says. And he says, even if I wanted to, I can't. It's like fire shut up in my bones. God chose Jeremiah to be a prophet to the nations. That was before he was even born. God chose you for something. You were created for a purpose. He had a plan for your life. He had something in mind for you and me to do when we came into the world. Now, what happens in most churches is that pastors come up here and tell you that and then say, God created you for a purpose. Good luck, go find it. I mean, it would be easier to give you a magic 8-ball when you left here, right? Maybe that's what you could use to find your purpose. Am I supposed to open a donut shop? Maybe. Am I supposed to give up everything and give my life to missions? Try again. For some of us, that would be far easier because discovering our purpose can be incredibly complex. It's actually really frustrating. And here are 2 reasons why I think finding purpose is really hard. The first reason is that sometimes it takes time for us to find our purpose. There's multiple steps along our journey for us to get to where we're supposed to. There are so many people in the Bible who had to wait for so long to walk into what God wanted for them. Abraham and Sarah were promised a child, and that child would be a blessing to the nations. They didn't see that child for years and years and years, and it wasn't until Sarah was 90 and Abraham was 100 years old. Think about that picture for a second. That they finally had their son, the promised child. David was anointed as a young person, maybe 11, 12, 13 years old. But it wasn't until 20, 30 years later that he actually became king. And even Jesus, he comes into this earth, and for 30 years, we hear very little about his life. And then for 3 years, he completely changes the world. Maybe you're here this morning and things are taking a lot longer than you thought. Or you're in a place that you didn't expect that you'd be. Maybe you find yourself in circumstances that are like, where is this leading to? Can I tell you that God doesn't waste a thing? Could it be that he's using all of those things? I'm not saying he's causing it or even desiring for you to be in them. Could it be, though, that he's using them to mold you into the person who can fully live into your purpose? I think in those moments, we have an invitation to be patient and to trust that God might be developing us more than freeing us from our circumstances and taking us step by step along the way. Sometimes purpose takes time. The second reason why I think purpose can be frustrating is because we're actually called to more than just what we do. You know, if you go to a party or a social setting and you listen to people talk to each other, it's so fascinating what they say, all right? 80% of the time, the very first thing that a person says is what? Their jobs and what they do. Hey, who are you? Oh, I'm a software engineer. I work at Microsoft. Oh, who are you? I'm a pastor at Timberlake. Oh, who are you? I'm a plumber. Who are you? I'm a stay-at-home mom. For some reason, it's almost as if that's like the foundation of our life and the most important thing. But can I tell you this morning that that's not the most important thing? Culture might say you are what you produce, But God says something different. He says that we're called to more than that. Okay, so let me process this through my life, okay? I think there are 4 layers when I think about my life. 1, I think that I'm called to be a child of God. I think that I'm called to have a relationship with God. And if you've never considered Jesus or you're checking out church for the first time, that is a really important choice that can change everything, your worldview, your perspectives. I think that I'm called to be a child of God, number 1. Secondly, I think I'm called to be a husband. Sarah and I have been married for 17 years. And some of those years I was a good husband, and some of those years I was a bad husband. But I have continued to be faithful to that vow because I think it's important to honor what I said to her in front of God and people. Thirdly, I'm called to be a dad to Elise and Annette. And I love my daughters. They're so fun. They're so wonderful. All right? They have a lot of fire and they have a lot of spunk. And sometimes, I wish that they would use that to do other things because I just want them to put the clothes away. I just want them to clean their room. Maybe one day they can solve global poverty, but for right now, just eat your dinner. You know what I mean? But I love my kids. And I believe that I'm called to be a good father for them. And then lastly, I feel like, number 4, that I'm called to be a pastor at Timberlake. And this is why, if I were to lose my job for some reason, it wouldn't be the end of my world. Because it's the 4th thing on my list. There are plenty of other things that God has created me to be a part of and to live into. Here's the thing, you don't have to fully know your purpose to still have one. There are people and relationships that we have the opportunity to pour ourselves into. And when we fully live into each aspect of all of those things and pour into those relationships, amazing things happen. As a pastor, I have the joy of walking with people through some of life's most sacred moments. Birth, marriage, and death. And since being at Timberlake, I've had the chance to do several memorial services, some large, some small, but each unique and special in their own way. I've noticed a commonality between all of them. When loved ones and friends start talking about what they remember, it's very rarely the accolades or the awards or the achievements. They actually talk more about who the person was to them. They say things like, she was a great grandmother. She always sent me a card on my birthday with a $2 bill. Or he was a 3 a.m. friend. If I need him for anything, he shows up at 3 a.m. If there's a bat in my house at 3 a.m. and I need him, he comes through. He's basically Batman to me. She was a great listener. I was in a time of my life where I didn't feel like anyone understood me or heard me, but man, she really saw me for who I was and spoke life to me. He sacrificed so much for his family. He gave of himself in ways that went beyond just simple kindness. The truth is that people don't really care about what you and I do as much as they care about who we are and how we make them feel. And when we invest ourselves into those areas that God has called us to before our jobs, something amazing happens. Those connections, the love that is shared, it remains forever, even beyond life and death. It transcends time and space. Look at this verse that Jesus says in John 15. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. We are called to invest in each other in such a way that there is fruit that will last much beyond our lives. So what are those relationships? Who are the people that God has called you to, those roles that he has called you to that go beyond just what you produce? You're not an accident, and you were created for a purpose. And when we invest ourselves into those people, into all of the areas of our life, God can do some amazing things. Okay, so lastly, which means we're almost done, you are more than the lies you hear. You are more than the lies you hear. Okay, according to research by the National Science Foundation, the average person has 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. As many as 80% of these thoughts can be negative, and as many as 95% of those thoughts are repetitive, okay? That's anywhere from 9,600 to 48,000 negative thoughts per day. We live in an internal world of negativity. And oftentimes, these are lies that are not true about who we are. But they keep cycling over and over and over and over again. And when different events happen, those negative thoughts get triggered. And we end up stuck, believing things and thinking things about ourselves that are simply not true. Okay, so here's how it works out for me. I was born in South Korea. My biological father is Filipino, my mom is Korean. And the beginning of their love story is like a typical K-drama. Basically, my mom's girlfriend, this was pre-Jesus, but my mom's girlfriends were like, yo, let's go out. So they were like, oh, let's hit the club, let's go. So they went to the club. Now this was in the 80s where there was live music and live dancing and live bands. My father was the lead singer of an underground band. He toured a lot of Asia. He played guitar, he sang. He sounded like Michael Jackson, and they did a lot of Prince covers. And she saw him in the club as he was performing. And things happened, and then one thing led to another, and then nature happened. I was the mistake by the club, you know what I mean? Eventually, my mom discovered she's pregnant. And so she went to him and said, hey, I'm pregnant. And he said, hey, I don't want that. I don't want that. I'm not ready for that. I have a life, I'm doing things. And so my very first memory when I was in my mother's womb was my dad not wanting me. It was the feeling of being unchosen. And for a long time throughout my life, I believed that I was unchosen. It would show up in different areas all throughout my life. Korea, when I was young, was super racist back then. I look more Filipino than I do Korean, and so Korean kids would not play with me. I had to bribe them for them to hang out with me. I was unchosen. When I came to the US, I had a hard time learning the language. It was so hard trying to figure that out. And I just felt like there were teachers who didn't really care. I was unchosen. As I continued throughout my life, there were various moments when a crush that I had didn't like me. Or I went for this creative pursuit and maybe tried out to do something in band and it didn't happen. Unchosen, unchosen, unchosen. All throughout my life. Over and over again, stuck in this cycle. What are the lies that you hear in your life? What are the things that you hear over and over again from something that happened a long time ago? I'm not good enough. I'm unloved. I'm alone. I don't belong. I don't measure up. No one cares about me. I'm forgotten. What scripts do you hear over and over again? For me, it was, I'm unchosen. Everything changed in my life when I started believing a different narrative. I actually started believing that what God said about me was maybe greater than the things that I had been hearing. That verse, if God chose Jeremiah before he was born, I started telling myself, maybe God chose me before I was born. Before any human had the chance to say, you're unchosen, God said, Jedi, I've chosen you for myself. I've chosen you to do this and to be this in your life. And when I started thinking that way and when I started believing that, everything for me changed. I actually realized that the truth is all throughout my life, people chose me. Sure, my dad didn't choose me, but guess what? My mom fought for my life. She said, I don't care if I have to raise him on my own. Her family had completely abandoned her. She literally was on her own because she had gotten pregnant before marriage by a foreigner. And she said, I choose him. She was the first person who said that I was chosen. Yeah, there were friends that I had to pay to play with me, but there were also other friends who would stand up for me, who come over to my house. When I came later, there were teachers. Mr. Hubbard, I remember him. He would invest in my life and helped me learn English. And somehow I went from being a quiet kid to never missing a spelling word in the second year because of this one person's influence in my life. Mr. Hubbard chose me. There were other mentors and people who saw my skills and talents and gave me opportunities to play music in church and to sing and to do things. And over again, when I started believing what God said about me more than the lies that I heard, I realized that there's a narrative about my life that is absolutely true that I just couldn't see before. Can I tell you that most of us, nearly all of us, it's not reality that affects the way that we live. It's our perception of reality. It's the stories and the narratives and the things that you and I choose to believe that dictate who we become. And maybe God is giving you an invitation to say, hey, I know you've heard some lies and you've heard some other things, but that's not who you are. So I ask you again, what's the lie you hear? What's the cycle that you're stuck in? I love this verse that Paul writes. Summing it all up, friends, I'd say you'll do best by filling your minds and meditating on things true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, gracious, the best, not the worst, the beautiful, not the ugly, things to praise, not things to curse. Most times when people talk about this verse, they think it's about thinking about heaven or about God. But what if God is saying, I want you to think this about yourself? I want you to think this about yourself, the things that are good and beautiful and authentic, things that are worth praising and not cursing. You're more than the lies you hear. The story of Jesus and the story of the Bible says that we're loved. It says that we're chosen. It says that we're forgiven and that we can have a new beginning regardless of what we've done or what's been done to us. It says that we are more than overcomers because God is with us in our hardest moments. It says that you belong to Him and we belong to each other and we're part of a family. We're never alone. God says that He's not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and of a sound mind. And if you're struggling with anxiety or depression or mental illness, God says that you can find peace and solace in the midst of that struggle. He says you're not forsaken. Just like God told me I was chosen, He says that you too are chosen. Can you believe what God says about you today? Are you willing to consider that maybe the cycles of lies that you hear are not what you're destined for? When we choose to believe a different narrative and to see the truth, our lives move forward in ways that are absolutely amazing. I love this quote by pastor and author Christine Caine. When we win the war in our minds, we can move forward in who God has created us to be. So make who God says you are bigger than the lies you've heard from the enemy. My wife and I, we're very, very different. And some of you have heard those stories. You know that she's like a healthy person. She's really into organic food and having single source ingredient stuff all on her plate. I'm like, yo, give me my McDonald's Coke and the fries and the double cheeseburger, please. Many of you know, right, that she's really organized and has her home clothes and outside clothes and all that, and I don't really care. I just wear my clothes, whatever. You know that. We're very different. The way that we communicate is actually very, very different. I'll ask her, hey, how are you doing? How was work? How are things? She's like, good. Anything happened today? No. Oh, how was that meeting that you prepared for? Great, things are awesome. That's it. She'll ask me the same questions. How was work? Oh, it was great, it was wonderful, and la, 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 la. How was that meeting, that thing you prepared for? It was great, but it actually reminded me of that time in 5th grade when I had a friend that said this to me, and then after that, it was later in 10th grade, and then but there was this time in college, and then and that's why I really like Shane, because he's a good friend to me. Okay, if you know me, you know I'd like to talk. I talk a lot. And so my wife and I, we had to figure out a way to manage this, okay? And so she was like, I need you to tell me the bottom line every time you talk. She would say, you need to tell me what the bottom line is first, and then you could tell me your 20-minute story. And so I would say, she would say, how's work? And I would say, the bottom line is, it was great. And then I could talk for as long as I wanted. It was crazy, but it's worked for us. Okay, so we're talking about identity. We're talking about who we are, okay? Okay, so what is the bottom line of all of this? What is the bottom line of identity? The bottom line is simply this: you matter to God. You matter to God. It might be hard for you to believe. Maybe because you've never considered church and this is your first time and it's all new to you, or maybe because we've become so numb to the cycles that we're stuck in. But here's the truth. You're not an accident. You were created for a purpose, and you are more than the lies you hear. You matter to God. He loves you. He cares about you. All the struggles you're going through, the addictions that no one knows about, the conversations that you have with yourself, the moments that you feel like giving up and not showing up anymore, all of that, it matters to him. And so where are you this morning? Do you feel like you're living your life with this foundational truth, or do you feel like you might have forgotten it? No matter what you're going through, I want you to hear, you matter to God. Let me pray for you. I want to pray for two groups of people. The first group is those who maybe you've never considered making Jesus the Lord and leader of your life. You've never made that decision. You know, maybe you think life is good and maybe you think things are fine, but can I tell you that there's so much more God wants to give to you? And maybe today is the day where you say, yes, I want to give my life to you, Jesus. And it's really simple. The scripture just tells us that if we just decide in our hearts and say, Lord, I love you. I believe what you say about me. Be the Lord and leader of my life. That's all it takes. And when you say that, it changes your reality in this life and the next. I want to pray for you if that's you. Even right now, I feel like God is reaching out to you and tugging at your heart. And in your own way, with your own words, you can find a way to say that prayer. The second group of people I want to pray for are those who are struggling. Maybe the foundation of your identity is built on something else. I'm telling you, you matter to God. God, we come before you this morning just as we are. We love you and we need you. God, I want to pray for my friends who are choosing to accept you into their life. Whatever words they found, whatever intentions they put to you, God, I pray that you would honor that step of faith. That when they say, you're the Lord and leader of my life, I choose to believe you, Jesus, something changes. I pray that they would feel your love and your grace in a powerful way, and that you would surround them with people who can help them to believe those things and to grow in the ways that you desire for them. God, I want to pray for all the other people under the sound of my voice who are struggling this morning. Maybe they're caught in cycles of addiction or caught in cycles of negative thinking. Lord, I pray that there would be freedom. I pray that there would be release and that strongholds would break under the truth of what you say about us. You say that we are loved, that we are chosen, that we have purpose, that we matter. I pray that that would be louder than anything, Lord, and that people would find freedom and that they would find the courage to be able to say yes and to really believe that in their life. God, help us. Help us in our unbelief. Help us in our struggles. We love you and we thank you for the ways you love us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thanks for watching. But before you go, please be sure to bookmark this page so that you can find us again next week. And are you looking for a way to get engaged and join a team? The online chat engagement team is a role that anyone and everyone can do, and it's simple. Engage with people, create an environment where people are free to be themselves, and more importantly, open to receive the truth of Jesus. And if you're interested in joining this team and becoming part of what God is doing through Timberlake Online, please let me know on your connection card. Links can be found in chat, and I'll see you here next week at online.timberlakechurch.com.